Oh, hi. You may be wondering why we're in Life's Potluck Ballroom listening to this Viennese waltz music. Stay tuned to find out more. I'm John Paulus. You're listening to Life's Potluck Buffet. Now, before we get to optical illusions and today's worksheet, I want to give you a quick update on the closed captioning. So far, my name is still being spelled wrong by the auto-generated caption. I'm not going to repeat how it's being spelled wrong. I will say it is not being spelled the correct way, which is Paulas, Paulus. The closed captioning is getting Life's Potluck Buffet correct more often. So I'm not seeing any more instances of Life's Public Buffet. I can't think of anything less appetizing than something called a public buffet. Okay, so thankfully we're going to eliminate that. Oh, and now I've said Life's Public Buffet like 6 times. So Life's Potluck Buffet is what we're talking about. So in the introduction, I talked about Viennese waltz music. And the reason that place is important is because of a person named, I'm going to try to get this name right, Ignaz Paul Vital Troxler, who is a Swiss physician who was working in Vienna. Oh, wenn Sie Schweizer sind, sagen Sie mir bitte, wie ein Dutch Oven auf Schweizerdeutsch heißt. Meine Lehrerin Frau Schmidt wäre stolz auf mich gewesen. Hallo Frau Schmidt, wenn Sie hören und vielen Dank, dass Sie so eine tolle Lehrerin sind. And now back to our regular programming. So Troxler, the Swiss-born physician working in Vienna, discovered an effect and published it in 1804. And that's called, in English, Troxler fading. And that is the principle behind today's worksheet. Okay, so Troxler knew some really famous people back in the late 18th and early 19th century. Like, for example, apparently he was friends with Beethoven, Ludwig van Beethoven, the composer. That's interesting. Troxler discovered an optical illusion that has to do with visual perception. And he wrote a paper on it in 1804. And the idea is that when you stare at a particular point for 10, 20 seconds, other things in your visual field that are kind of a little bit fuzzy, they can't be like sharp, because if they're sharp, then you don't focus away from it. But other things in that visual field that are fuzzy will disappear. So you'll see this a lot. You could look it up on the internet. Troxler's fading is what it's called. And it's Troxler is the name. There are explanations for this. I'm not going to go into detail. I've read up a little bit on it. It has a lot to do with how your perception, whatever sense it is, whether it's sense of touch or sight, your perception of something that is not changing goes away. So you might feel something on your skin to start out, but then it could stay there. And as you focus away from it, you don't really feel it anymore, right? And so that's another way you can learn about this effect, is to notice that if you put something on your arm, say, and it doesn't really move, and you just leave it there, you'll feel it to start, but then you won't feel it again until it moves or you move it. So why is Troxler's fading so important to Life's Potluck Buffet? Do you remember the episode about the hidden spruce exercise that I do with groups of people, about the Norway spruce and how its original habitat, as it now stands in our current day, are places that are not associated with common uses of the Norway spruce. For example, in cold weather big cities as Christmas trees, or its presence in places where winters are extremely cold, But the habitat of the Norway spruce, from which it repopulated itself northwards in Europe after the end of the last ice age, that habitat is near the French and Italian Rivieras. So that's the example I usually use for work that you do and you don't think about its importance to you, and you just kind of write it off as, oh, that's that silly thing. Oh, of course, that's just something I do. It's likely to be faded out from your perception of yourself in the same way that the stimulus that's away from that focal point in the optical illusion related to Troxler's fading fades away, and you don't see that anymore. But it's there, and it's important. And so for this worksheet, I have an example of the Troxler effect for you to play around with and see if it works. And while you're looking at the Troxler effect there, allow the disappearance of the noodles, which you'll see there is a blue dot there, and then on the bottom of the page there are the magenta noodles. But notice how they're kind of faded out. That is really important to make this effect work. The darker they are, the more likely it is that you'll fixate on them as well. Your eyes will go back and forth, and so you won't lose the image on the bottom there. So there's that blue dot, and then there's the faded out magenta noodles on the bottom. And so stare at the blue dot for 20 seconds, and the magenta noodles there should disappear as you're looking at this. And so give that a shot. Let me know how it works for you. I put a fair amount of tinkering into this because it is the kind of thing where it's very easy, or at least I found it's very easy to kind of create something that's too visually prominent as the thing that's supposed to disappear so that it doesn't disappear. And also I find that for me, and I think for everyone else, it matters how close you are, how far away you are. So you kind of have to play around sometimes with distance. You might, if you're looking at this on a phone and you look down and you see this, I don't know how well it works, but let me know. I understand from reading up on this that the larger the image is, the more likely it is to be a quick kind of disappearance of the stimulus. In this case, the faded magenta noodles. So give it a shot. Let me know in the comments. Visual perception things are interesting. You may remember from years ago that dress, the one that was either white and gold or blue and black. That gives you another example of visual illusion. That is not the Troxler effect. I'm sorry for even bringing it up. So that's our episode for today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe if you already haven't subscribed. And thank you for subscribing and liking videos if you have been doing that. I so greatly appreciate it. And to all my friends out there listening in Vienna and Switzerland and every other part of the German language speaking world, danke fürs Zuhören. Tschüss.